All right, let's dive into a story from the very early days of Buddhism. It's all about a revolutionary idea, the power structures that kind of grew up around it, and the one disciple who dared to ask some really uncomfortable questions.
And it all boils down to this one central question. What happens when something meant to set you free ends up becoming a system of control? It's a question that, honestly, you see pop up again and again throughout history. So, to really get a grip on this conflict, we first have to understand the original promise. See, early Buddhism wasn't just another philosophy. It was a complete revolution in how knowledge was even shared.
At the time, if you wanted to talk about religion or philosophy, you did it in Sanskrit. It was this complex, elite language that only the Brahmin priests really knew. But the Buddha? He made a totally radical choice. He decided to teach in Pali, the everyday language of the villages, the Pali. And by doing that, by speaking the language of the people, he was sending a message that was loud and clear. This path, it's for everybody. The farmer, the shepherd, the mom at home. It wasn't meant to be locked away in some ivory tower for scholars and kings. But as this new way of thinking started to catch on and get more followers, a kind of tension started to build. A conflict between the core idea itself and the institution that was growing around it. And that's what we call the institutional shift. It happens when a philosophy that's all about personal freedom starts to get organized. You get rules, you get hierarchies, and before you know it, the sata, the power structures, they realize, hey, we can use this to manage the jan, the people. And just like that, a tool for freedom can become a tool for control.
But not everybody was just going along with this new program. One of the very first disciples, he saw the warning signs, and he was not afraid to ask the tough questions. His name was Bhadrakka.
So picture this. Buddha's first ever sermon was given to just 5 guys. And these weren't just any guys. They were all highly educated men from the priestly Brahmin class. They were total insiders to the very system the Buddha was trying to challenge. But even in that small group, Bhadrakka was different. While the others were focused on these big abstract ideas like nirvana and enlightenment, Bhadrakka just kept looking back at the world they'd left. He saw what was being forgotten, and more importantly, who was being forgotten. You see, Bhadrakka's whole perspective was rooted in real life. He got that for your average person, achieving some kind of personal nirvana doesn't magically fix everything. The struggle, the beauty, the suffering of daily life, it's all still there. And this very grounded, very real-world view led Bhadrakka to completely reimagine what Dharma, the path, the truth, the religion, what it all actually meant. The standard view is that Dharma is kind of like a boat. It's a set of scriptures that will carry you across the river of life to the other side. But for Bhadrakka, that was way too passive. He thought, no, Dharma isn't the boat at all. His whole philosophy is right here in this quote. Dharma isn't something you just passively receive. It's something you do. It's the messy, difficult, hands-on act of navigating life yourself. It's not about being carried. It's about jumping into the water and learning how to swim. He was basically saying that real truth isn't found in some quiet temple or in a dusty old book. It's out there, in the world. You'll find it in the tired wisdom etched into the feet of an old person who's walked 1,000 miles, or in the noisy chaos of a busy city. So armed with this whole different perspective, Bhadrakka started to challenge the institution that was growing up around him. And his questions were so simple, but so profound. His first question hit right at the beginning of the whole movement. He pointed out that while the Buddha was seeking enlightenment, he was taken care of by local tribal people. They fed him, they looked after him. So Bhadrakka asks, why was the very first sermon, the big reveal, saved for 5 elites while the people who actually helped him were completely ignored? And he started to see a pattern. The stories that were being written down, the ones being passed on, they were always about the rich and powerful. Kings, warriors, priests who converted. But what about all the ordinary people? The ascetics, the tribals, all the forgotten ones? I mean, Bhadrakka was basically asking a question we still wrestle with today. Who gets to be remembered by history and who gets erased? And this really gets to the core of the misunderstanding. Bhadrakka believed Buddha had given the people a shastra, which in Pali can mean a weapon for their own liberation. But the rulers and kings who adopted Buddhism treated it as a shastra too, only for them it meant a holy scripture, a rule book. It's the exact same word, but with 2 completely opposite meanings, one for freedom, the other for control.
Now the whole story comes to a head years later, right at the end of the Buddha's life. And right there in the middle of it all, of course, is Bhadrakka, the man who never stopped asking questions.
So the story goes that as the Buddha was passing away, he heard someone outside, just weeping, and it was Bhadraka, the same man who was there for the very first teaching, was now at the end, still full of sorrow. And the Buddha calls for him to give him one last lesson.
And these were the Buddha's famous last words to him. Apo Dipo Bhava. Be a light unto yourself. Don't look for the light somewhere else. Not in me, not in a book, not in a new religion. The power, the truth, it's already inside you.
But this is the tragic irony of the whole story. After hearing both the very first and the very last sermon, Bhadraka had to watch as the other disciples did the exact opposite of what they were told. They immediately got to work building a new institution, a new hierarchy, basically a new system of control that looked a whole lot like the Brahmanism they were supposed to be rebelling against.
And this was Bhadraka's heartbreaking conclusion. He realized that the other disciples, in all their cleverness, had twisted that final teaching. They basically decided, sure, the Buddha could be his own light, but nobody else can. Everyone else needed their guidance, their rules, their institution to find the way. They were meant to stay in the dark.
So, we're left with Bhadraka's final haunting question. Think about it. If the man who heard both the first and the last words of the Buddha was still weeping at the end, lost in a system he didn't even recognize, then who actually made it? Who really became their own light? And it makes you wonder, how many paths to liberation end up becoming the very prisons they were trying to help us escape?